phone on the executive's desk had been ringing for 3 minutes straight. Maria's hand trembled as she stared at it, the international number flashing on the screen. Her mother had told her 1,000 times never to touch anything in these offices except what needed cleaning. But something told her this call was different. Something told her that if she didn't pick up, everything would fall apart. Before we continue with what happened next, I want to invite you to join our Sage Stories family by hitting that subscribe button. We share stories like this one that remind us of the goodness in people's hearts. Drop a like if you believe in the power of kindness, and let us know in the comments what you think about Maria's impossible choice. Maria Rodriguez was 16 years old, and every evening after school, she joined her mother Carmen at the Sterling Tower, one of downtown Chicago's most prestigious office buildings. Carmen had been cleaning these floors for 12 years, working the night shift when the executives and assistants had all gone home. The pay wasn't much, but it was honest work. And Carmen took pride in every polished surface, every vacuumed carpet, every sparkling window. Maria would do her homework in the break room, then help her mother finish faster so they could get home at a reasonable hour. Her mother had dreams for her, dreams that involved college and a career that didn't require scrubbing other people's floors. But Maria never looked down on her mother's work. She saw the dignity in it, the way Carmen treated each office like it mattered, because to someone it did. That Thursday evening in March started like any other. Maria finished her calculus problems around 8 and grabbed a dust cloth to help her mother tackle the executive floor. The 32nd floor belonged to Sterling Global Investments, and Carmen always saved it for last because it required extra care. The CEO, Mr. James Harrison, was particular about his office. Everything had to be perfect. As they cleaned, Maria noticed papers scattered across Mr. Harrison's desk, which was unusual. Her mother had mentioned that he was normally meticulous. There were documents with German words she didn't understand, spreadsheets with numbers that had so many zeros they made her dizzy, and a leather folder embossed with a logo she recognized from the news. Her mother gently moved them aside to dust, careful not to disturb their order. That's when the phone started ringing. Not the usual quick 3 rings before going to voicemail, but persistent, urgent rings that seemed to echo through the empty office. Maria and her mother exchanged glances. Carmen shook her head firmly. They were not to answer phones. They were not to touch anything unnecessary. Those were the rules that kept her employed. But the ringing continued. 5 rings, 10 rings, 15. Maria walked closer to the desk and saw the caller, ID. A German number with so many digits it filled the screen. Something in her gut twisted. This wasn't a casual call. This was someone who desperately needed to reach Mr. Harrison. She remembered something. Her mother had told her about the previous week. Mr. Harrison had been stressed more than usual. He'd been on the phone speaking what sounded like German, and he'd left his office much later than normal. Carmen had overheard his assistant mention something about a Frankfurt deal. Though she hadn't understood the details, it wasn't her place to understand. It was her place to empty the trash and move on. Maria looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:15 in Chicago, which meant it was 4:15 in the morning in Germany. Someone was calling at 4 in the morning, someone who'd been trying to reach Mr. Harrison for 3 solid minutes. Her mother was saying something, warning her to leave it alone, but Maria's hand was already reaching for the receiver. She answered in a shaky voice, hoping whoever was on the other end spoke English. A man's voice burst through, rapid and agitated. He was speaking English, but with a thick German accent and at a pace that made it hard to follow. He was asking for James, for Mr. Harrison, saying something about papers and signatures and a deadline. Maria's mouth went dry. She managed to explain that Mr. Harrison wasn't there, that the office was closed, that she was just helping her mother clean. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then silence. Then a string of words she didn't quite catch. But the desperation in his voice was unmistakable. The man who introduced himself as Klaus Müller tried to slow down and explain. There was a merger, a very important merger between Sterling Global and a German manufacturing company. Papers were supposed to have been signed and submitted to the Regulatory Commission in Frankfurt by midnight Frankfurt time. That gave them less than 8 hours. But there was a problem with one of the documents. A critical error that would invalidate the entire deal if not corrected. He'd been trying to reach Mr. Harrison for hours. The CEO's cell phone was going to voicemail. His home number wasn't answering. This office line was his last hope. Maria felt panic rising in her chest. She was just a kid who helped her mom clean offices. What was she supposed to do with information about million-dollar mergers? But Klaus kept talking, and as he spoke, something clicked in her mind. She remembered those papers on the desk. She remembered seeing the same logo from the phone screen on one of the leather folders. She asked Klaus to hold on. Her mother was staring at her like she'd lost her mind, whispering urgently in Spanish that they needed to hang up, that this wasn't their business, that they could get fired. But Maria put the phone on speaker and started looking at the papers on the desk. Klaus guided her, describing what the document should look like. After a minute of searching, she found it. A thick contract with tabs marking signature pages. Klaus explained that page 47 had the wrong entity name. It listed a subsidiary that had been dissolved 6 months ago. If that document was filed, the entire deal would collapse. Months of negotiations, hundreds of jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, $70 million in investment. All of it would evaporate because of one clerical error. Maria's hands were shaking as she flipped to page 47. She saw it. The wrong name right there in black and white. But what could she do? She couldn't change legal documents. She wasn't a lawyer or an executive. She was a 16-year-old girl holding a dust cloth. Klaus's voice became quieter, more personal. He told her about the people depending on this deal. The factory workers in Frankfurt who'd been told their jobs were secure if the merger went through. The American employees who'd been promised expansion and growth. His own daughter was working at the factory, he said. She was Maria's age. She had dreams of becoming an engineer, dreams that depended on her father keeping his job. Something shifted in Maria's heart. She understood what it meant to have dreams, to have parents who sacrificed so you could reach for something better. She looked at her mother, whose eyes were filled with fear and concern, but also something else, trust. Her mother trusted her judgment. Maria asked Klaus for Mr. Harrison's personal contact information. Klaus gave her an email address and a cell phone number, though he'd already tried both. Maria hung up and did something that would have seemed impossible an hour ago. She sat down at Mr. Harrison's computer, which was still logged in, and she opened his email. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might pass out. She typed carefully, explaining who she was, why she was in his office, about the call from Klaus Muller, about the error on page 47, about the midnight deadline. She included Klaus's contact information and marked it as urgent. Then she tried calling Mr. Harrison's cell phone herself. It went to voicemail. She left a message, her voice stronger now, repeating the essential information. Then she called Klaus back and told him what she'd done. She gave him her mother's cell phone number and told him to call if he heard anything. All they could do now was wait and hope. Maria and her mother finished cleaning in a daze. They rode the train home in silence, both wondering if they'd just saved something important or destroyed Carmen's career. At 11:30 that night, Carmen's phone rang. It was Klaus. His voice was different now, lighter, filled with relief and joy. Mr. Harrison had called him 20 minutes ago. He'd been at a charity gala with his phone on silent. He'd seen Maria's email, rushed home, corrected the document, and submitted everything electronically with an hour to spare. The deal was saved. Klaus was crying as he thanked them. He said his daughter would get to pursue her dreams. He said Maria had done something extraordinary. The next morning, Maria went to school exhausted but unable to focus. That afternoon, her mother called her, voice shaking. Mr. Harrison wanted to meet them. Maria's stomach dropped. This was it. They were getting fired. But when they arrived at his office that evening, Mr. Harrison wasn't angry. His eyes were red like he'd been up all night, but he was smiling. He shook Maria's hand like she was an adult and equal. He thanked her for her quick thinking, her courage to answer that phone, her intelligence in understanding what was at stake. He thanked Carmen for raising a daughter with such character. Then he did something neither of them expected. He offered Maria a full scholarship through Sterling Global's educational foundation, 4 years of college tuition and expenses covered, and he offered Carmen a position in the building's management company, with better hours and double her current salary. Maria tried to find words, but all she could do was cry. Her mother held her, and both of them understood that answering that phone had changed everything. Not because of the money or the opportunities, though, Those mattered. But because in that moment Maria had chosen to care about people she'd never met, to take a risk for strangers who needed help. Sometimes the biggest moments in our lives come in the smallest choices. Maria could have walked away from that ringing phone. She could have followed the rules and protected herself. But she listened to something deeper. That voice inside that tells us when someone needs help, when we're being called to do something that matters. She trusted that voice, and it didn't just save $1 million deal. It saved dreams. It saved jobs. It saved futures. The next time you face a moment like that, when you can choose between safety and service, between protecting yourself and protecting others, remember Maria standing in that office with trembling hands. Remember that kindness doesn't ask for permission or wait for perfect circumstances. It answers the call, even when it's scary, even when the stakes are impossibly high. And when we have the courage to answer, we discover that we're capable of so much more than we ever imagined. What's a moment when you took a risk to help someone? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how you answered your own call.